Do a green bowl first, and then gonna do the Julia Child thing and finish it?
No, we're not going to do a finish because we're not going to have.
Okay, so we're just gonna be,
just rough turn one.
okay. We'll start with Claude showing us how it's done. Are you gonna talk about what they should do when they get home with their green bowl?
Sure.
Okay. So you go home with a first turn bowl, which means it's gonna have fairly thick walls, and it's gonna warp. If you do it right and protect it right, it won't crack. We'll talk about how to make sure that happens. And in 4 to 6 months, when it's completely dry, you chuck it back in the lathe and finish it off, have a finished product.
As we all know, it is Memorial Day weekend. Any veterans in the room? 1, 2, 3. Thank you for your service. Seems though we were talking about sharpening, I think I'm going to start with that. I do teach at Sanborn Mills Farm, and for the same reason, Phil has set up a system so that the students can sharpen their own. I did that at Sanborn Mills. So we set them up with jigs. You know, if you ask 10 turners, you know, how do they sharpen, you'll get 10 different answers, right? I'm going to show you what I do and why. What you do is, you know, you might do something different and for different reasons. So I have 3 basic bowl gouges. When I say basic bowl gouges, for turning, I use three gouges. I have an Ellsworth grind, and I have 2 Sorby 1/2-inch bowl gouges. They're the same gouge, but they're ground different. So I've got a different ground on the green one than I do on the blue one. The blue one's got a really a more of an angle on it and more of a bevel, a longer bevel. Then this has got a shorter bevel. And the shorter bevel will allow me to make a turn on the inside of a bowl where this longer bevel will not. I will not be able to ride the bevel. So I have 3 different grinds. I have 1 setup on the grinder. Now I went through a little bit of trouble to bring my grinder today because I wanted to show you what I have at home. Here's how I do it. And the grinder is actually a little closer to my lathe. So if I'm turning, a lot of times I won't even turn the lathe off. I take 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. My grinder's right here. My jigs are hanging above the grinder. I grab the right jig for the tool. And like Phil was saying, you know, there's a 2-inch offset, which I have right here. Tighten that down. I have a little cheap lock here that I use for setting the length of my extension. So if this moved, I could just double check it. I can get back to 0 with this little stick on my adjuster. I have the reason they're color coded is, and I don't know if you can get this on camera, but the angles on these jigs are different for the different grinds. So I have one setup for 3 different chisels. CBN wheel. I've got a ceramic wheel on the other side, but I use a CBN on all my bowl gouges.
What's your grid on that wheel?
180, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, 180.
Okay.
And supposedly they last a lifetime. I was watching Thursday Night Live with Tom McLaughlin. He was talking about sharpening recently. And that CBN, I forget what it stands for, Mike. CBN stands for?
Cubic boron nitride.
Which is second only to diamond. So in hardness, and so why not use diamond? Well, diamond's gonna be a lot hotter. It's gonna turn hotter than the CBN. So the CBN is really ideal. It keeps your tools a lot cooler.
Yep.
So one of the problems I have with students, one is they're putting too much pressure on the tool, on the wheel. It's really, and it's, once you start it up, it's like being on ice. It's really slippery. And I did have one student fall off the edge and this thing caught the wheel and could have been a really bad accident. So really light touches. If you're losing the shape of the tool after grinding, you've ground too much steel. The idea with these jigs is you're taking, once you've got the shape you want, you can maintain that shape by taking you only got to take a little bit off. So I'm going to demonstrate that, but it is very slippery on the tool. So you want to be, and this is a good working height. I can set my tool and I can see my edge. Where if I'm up here and I can't, and my wheel's up here, you're not going to be able to get a good visual. You won't be able to see your cutting edge. So what is the edge supposed to look like?
Thanks.
So there's what an edge is supposed, your gouge is supposed to look like. What am I looking for? I'm looking for a straight line, this straight line coming down to the tip. So this is really, well, if I put a straight edge on there, it doesn't come and hit the tip, but almost. But this is what it should look like. It should be straight across on the wings, right down to the tip. Not so that the tip comes to a point, but it's going to be rounded. So when I laid my tool on here, I'm looking for that cutting edge to be square. So I'm going to hit the cutting edge, and then I'm going to roll it to the middle. I'm going to turn my tool and hit the cutting edge on this side and roll it to the middle. Let's try one. This is a 1725 RPM, so slow speed. So I'm holding it really up here. You're not gonna have control down here. I want to be able to pivot this on a pivot. So really light touch. I said I started there and didn't, did I? So I want to look at my cutting edge to know that it's flat. I want to maintain that straight line. I'm going to roll it to the middle. I'm going to step back, hit that cutting edge. And I'm going to look at the shine to see that I got that all the way out to the edge. And I can see a little bit of discoloration on the tip. I didn't quite get it all. But I want to take very little steel off. I'm putting a lot of pressure, and looks like the reason I'm not getting it yet is something moved a little bit in transport. Either this moved, or I know that my distant didn't move, but I think this might have moved a little. In fact, I know it did. So I'm getting a little bit of a different grind. So when I teach a Sanborn, I have this same setup so that I'm not sharpening. I'm going to let them sharpen. I'm going to teach them first and how to hold the tool so they're not rolling off that edge. I'm going to teach them first, and then I'm going to expect them to sharpen their own. And what I've found is they're putting way too much pressure on the tool, on the wheel, and taking way too much steel off. They're losing their shape too fast. So I've got my green tool, pretty sharp. I'm gonna switch to the blue tool. Same setup. Get my 2 inches, 2-inch offset. Notice how this one is a lot closer. It's a different grind. Make sure you're engaged there. I'm looking at my cutting edge straight down and not hitting it there either. Step back a little. I can see my cutting edge on the wheel. Get that to get back to center. I'm keeping those wings square, straight off the tip. So I'm looking down at the cutting edge to make sure it's flat against the wheel. And then swinging it to the middle, hit the flat, swinging it to the middle, and that's pretty good. And this one's got a little bit of a rounded, I didn't go quite far enough on the cutting edge. So I'll spend a couple of seconds there, take that back, and that's good. My Ellsworth grind, same setup, nothing's changed. Get that back on there. This is way higher up. But again, I'm looking at my knife edge. I want that knife edge square across, down to the middle. Knife edge. See how I'm pivoting right here. You can't pivot down here. You gotta be able to hold it up here. So this is how I sharpen at home. I do have a ceramic wheel on there. I do my skews here off this platform. All my spindle tools, every single one of them are sharpened on the sander. So I do bowl gouges and skews. Like,
Two things. One, you think it'll help the neophyte sharpeners to put magic marker on the book so they get a sense of where it's.
absolutely. You start with, if you've just bought a tool, Mike just mentioned you just bought a tool and you want to grind it for the first time. You know, this green one is a factory grind. The bevel's a factory grind. The angle's factory ground. So when I bought this, I wanted to keep that shallow grind. But if you paint part of it with a marker, permanent marker, you don't have to paint the whole bevel. But to check that you have, so I just painted the tip poorly, but it's on there. So once you've painted the tip, you can, they turn a long time. So once you've painted the tip, whether you're using the sander or the grinder, whatever you're sharpening, just paint the tip and then rotate that by hand, and then look to see that you get the grind all the way across. And I can see that it's all the way except for the tip, pretty close. My machine moved a little here, so I didn't quite get it all the way there, but you get the drift. If I'm going to regrind, I'm going to use a ceramic wheel to take a lot more aggressive. So I'll take it down with that and then go back to the CBN.
Okay.
So if you're reshaping a tool, yeah, you want to get something that's a little more aggressive.
All right, thank you.
And Matt Monaco, he sharpens his cues right off, all his tools right off a ceramic wheel with, I don't know what this grit is on the ceramic wheel, but it's got to be like 80 or something. I mean, and Matt Monaco's no slouch. If you watched his demo and watched any of his videos, you know he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing.
Does he hone afterwards, or he just takes it right over?
Right off the grinder on a ceramic wheel. He preferred him over CBN. So again, you ask 10 turners and you'll get 10 different answers. So my point is, find something that works for you. You know, in the beginning, I struggled with sharpening. And you know, I spent 90% of my time when I started with sharpening. My time was spent trying to figure out the sharpening, because if you don't have a sharp tool, you're really going to struggle and you're going to get discouraged. Yep.
Well, two questions. One is, when you are sharpening, what are your angles that you use for the bottom gouge and then your other gouge? Because I know the Ellsworth. And then the second question is, watching them, I'm not sure that I'm correct or not, was the flute open to like 3 o'clock and then 9 o'clock, or 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock?
Well, two-part questions. I don't even know what these angles are. The Ellsworth one is I maintain the same angle, and I did that by adjusting the jig to fit this offset that I have. So I manipulated the jig to maintain this angle. Didn't change it. I did change the angle on the blue one to more of a fingernail grind, and you can buy these with a fingernail grind on them, it's still not enough. I had to take these back. The fingernail grind that they sell you actually is closer to my green tool. So when I got the green one, I maintained the factory grind, the angle, and never measured it. I have no idea what it is. Is it 40 degrees, 38 degrees? I have no idea. So it's really becomes, what works for you. So I've developed I've set these grinds, and you develop muscle memory, and this is what works for me. And you may have to do the same in your shops.
You don't do any heel relief or micro bevels. From your perspective, advantages and disadvantages of the kind of straight.
That's a great question. If you watch Donna sharpen her tools, she hand sharpens everything. And there is, I guess you could call it a micro bevel. So there's an advantage. The advantage of the micro bevel is you have very, very thin, short bevel coming down your bowl. And I do get with this long bevel, not the blue one, but the green one, when I'm finishing the inside of a bowl with this long bevel, I have relieved the heel some before. What happens is the heel will rub. If you're writing a bevel, the heel will rub. And it'll actually, burnish, but it crushes the fibers of the wood. And it'll show up when you start sanding. You won't see it until you start sanding. And then you'll have a little bit of a bare sanding. It really shows up in cherry prominently. On the hardwoods, not as much. On the softer woods, which I think cherry's a little bit softer than the maple, most cases, does leave something you got to sand out. It'll crush the fibers. So I do sometimes relieve the heel to prevent that. And because you're hollow grinding, right, on a wheel, think about the physics. Once you engage that cutting edge, the forces coming down on the cutting edge will force that heel down. It'll nail your tool down to the wood. Just think of that curve that's on there. When the wood hits that cutting edge, it forces it down, quite a bit of pressure, without you adding pressure to it. So it does make a difference, yes, but it takes some getting used to. If you look at Donna's tools, the bevel, the cutting bevel is like less than 1/8 of an inch. So the heel is cut way back, and there's very little bevel to ride. It's a matter of getting used to it and what works for you. So,
question, yeah. So when you was talking about your sharpening system, if you have a Wolverine, does all that stuff work the same way?
yeah, it's a matter of adjusting it to a spot that'll work for more than one tool. That's the advantage, whereas I don't have to reset that every time. I have these 3 gouges on the lathe at all times when I'm turning bowls. Mike?
I know sometimes people sharpen non-ferrous things on the wheel. What do you use to clean it?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't use a non-ferrous.
What they do?
I don't. So I don't worry about it. How do you clean it? I was talking to Mike earlier about cleaning my wheel. Water and a nylon brush or brass brush would work to clean it. It looks like I've got a little bit of buildup in the middle, which is where I use this the most. And it probably could stand a little bit of cleaning, maybe take it off the grinder and bring it to a sink and use a nylon brush and clean it off. Might be a good idea. I think there are lubricants you can use for CBN. Right.
Question for you, Claude, on the sanding belts. What grit do you use and where do you get them?
Well, you can get them almost anywhere. And I use like a 120. And I
120 what?
120 grit.
What kind of grit?
What kind of grit? It's aluminum oxide.
Aluminum oxide?
Yeah.
I think,
You can get the ceramic ones, supposedly last a little longer, but how much longer? Is it worth
I think Peter was talking about a zirconium oxide or something.
yeah. But aluminum oxide, 120. And I have the center of the belt's really worn on purpose, where I could use either side, it's a little coarser. And then as I get sharpened, I turn to the middle for like buffing it out, so paint it.
Do you relieve the burr on the bowl gouges?
No.
Leave it on the scraper.
I've been told that the burr breaks off as soon as it hits the wood. Why doesn't it break off when you hit it with a spindle tool? So what do you have to do with a spindle tool?
See the
I think it's the bevel angle is so sharp on the spindle tool that it's almost, it comes so much to a point, it's not going to pull the burr off. I believe that's why. So yeah, you do have to use the buffing wheel on spindle tools and knock that burr off. But on bowl gouges, the angle's so different. It's a more of a shallower angle that it knocks the burr off. Well, I think it doesn't do it on a spindle tool because of the sharp angle that you're hitting the wood on. That's my theory. Sticking with it. Mike,
You raise a good point, because when you sharpen a card scraper, the burr is what actually gives you the ability to take fine shaving. So in some instances, as you recommend, the burr actually assists you in taking the fine shaving. You don't want to get rid of it.
I didn't bring any of my scrapers because we didn't think we'd be using them today, but I purposely leave a burr on the scrapers, the round nose scrapers for the interior of a bowl. Certainly the burr is what does the cutting. So on a negative rake, you have two angles coming together, and you sharpen the top first, and then sharpen the bottom so that it creates the burr on the top. On your negative rake scraper is how you'd sharpen those. And I use a platform for that on my sander, not the CBN. All right, so let's get back to the task at hand. I wanted to take a little time today I know this is not a sharpening demo, but I had to, I wanted to get across that you should find something that works at your house, and you'll have much easier time turning. So what do I got in my hand here? I got a wood chisel. And we all know how wood chisels work. Most of us, and I'm keeping this kind of basic so that people that are just starting to turn, there might be a couple of you in this room that this might be beneficial for. So we talk about riding the bevel all the time. What's that mean? So a chisel's got a bevel on it, right? There's your bevel. And if I'm going to cut a piece of wood, if I'm going to take a shaving off this piece of wood, if I'm hitting the heel, nothing's happening, right? So if I lift the handle a little bit until I get a cutting edge, which is right there, now I begin to cut. I begin to get a little shaving. And that's how a chisel works, right? If I raise the handle too far, I just dig in. And if this wood was spinning, it would probably take some wood off, but it would tear the fibers. It would rip the fibers. So again, when we talk about riding the bevel, that's riding the bevel of this chisel. So when we take a turning tool, we talk about riding the bevel, all of a sudden you get at the lathe and the wood's turning, and you lose all concept of where the bevel is. What's the bevel? Where's the bevel? So this works the same way, right, as that chisel. So if I raise the handle until I start getting a cut, there it is. I know I'm on the bevel. Right there, I'm taking a little shaving off. If my handle's too low, I'm right in the heel, nothing's happening. As soon as I start raising the handle, now I got a shaving. So that's riding the bevel. When you start to see a shaving, you know you're on the bevel. So what I like to teach my students is that you gotta have a good stance when you come up to the lathe. You got to have your tool rest at the right height. I want them to belly up to the tool rest. Otherwise, you can't see your bevel. I want to look straight down and see my bevel. So I want to talk a little bit about grain direction. So this is a piece of oak that I pulled off my wood rack, piece of red oak to be more exact, and just cut it to 1/4 by 3/8 by 3/8. And you can see, if you were up here looking at it, you can see the fibers, the end grain fibers in this piece of oak. So watch what happens when I have a little thing of water here, and I'm going to use this to blow bubbles. Check that out. So you can actually blow bubbles through red oak. So we're talking about this grain fibers. So grain, like straws, right? I just proved that there's like straws in this wood by blowing these bubbles. So we always want to know what our grain direction is. So where'd this come out of the tree, right? Where's our grain direction? Just like this, right? So where's the end grain stop and the side grain start? Right? If you bring this all the way across, if you're looking at my end grain here, it's end grain all the way until you hit this edge. I've got a little flat of flat grain here. Everything else, so this is 99% end grain on bowl turning, 99%. So these got covered because there's end grain there. But so you got to know your grain direction. And so why is that important? It's the cutting action has to be friendly to the grain, has to be downhill. So like sharpening a pencil, you can't sharpen a pencil going this way. You have to sharpen it friendly to the grain. So the fibers below this top fiber is supporting the fiber as you're cutting. It's laying the fibers down. Can't go in the other direction. If you do, it'll tear the grain and you won't be able to sand it out, especially in hardwoods. So, any questions on grain direction? Pretty simple, right? We all know that, but it'll become important once we start turning. So I've got a blank, and it's not round, and I don't know where center is. What am I going to do? You could measure it. If this were round, you might have a hard time finding center. I got this from Ron Marcoux, Mr. Marcoux. He's very generous with his stuff. So and these blanks came from Ron. So thanks for Ron. Ron's in what, Europe somewhere, traveling? Spain, okay. So this is a centering tool where I can put it on a blank and look at these rings and I can find center. And oh, lo and behold, there is a center mark. So when you pick up a blank and you don't find a center mark, this would be a great way to, this will be here so you can use it to find your center. So that'll be here, thanks to Ron. So how do you get started? I got a blank. I do a 3-day class at Sanborn Mills, and I start with a log. And how to dissect a log, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a grain that's going to be parallel to the pith, so the grain doesn't run out. And I think Ron may have done a nice job with these. Looks like the grain's pretty flat. So we won't get into that, but two ways to mount it on a lathe, right? I can mount it with a spur drive, which I have some. I didn't bring a spur drive, but this one's a little more aggressive. This is a John Siegel spur drive, and you can see this is a lot more aggressive. And judging by the nicks on this, somebody clipped it. So it's a good idea when you're removing one of these that you hold on to it. When you're taking it off and punching it out, you want to give it a good wrap, but you want to be able to hold on to this so it doesn't fall and dent your lathe bed, or lo and behold, chip a tooth on these. These got to be really sharp in order to grab your wood. You can take the spear point out and sharpen the flat points on a grinder. I've done that before. This is a much less aggressive spur drive. I wouldn't use that on a bowl. Not aggressive enough. So spur drive is one way to mount. What I do when I'm teaching a class is I use the worm drive. Is that what they're called?
Yes. Woodworkers.
Woodworm. So, so when I started, I bought a Nova truck. I had a jet lathe, bought a Nova truck, and the woodworm fell out of the box. And I'm like, what the heck is this? I had no idea what it was for. So I use this a lot, especially when I'm teaching, because it's a safe way to hold it on the lathe. with this worm drive. You can certainly use the spur drive and the tailstock to hold it on there. You have some, by using a spur drive and using the tailstock, you have some flexibility in the alignment of this. You can change the alignment a little bit. So my life center, two different ones, right? I've got the cone life center, and I got a cup life center. For this, I like these cup centers, and I don't know what the school has here, but for life centers. But the cone center, this point just keeps digging in. I can't put a lot of pressure on this cone because it just keeps digging into the wood. Where this cone, I can put a lot more pressure with the cone center, and it doesn't dig in as far. And it gives me some stability left to right, where this won't. So I prefer the cup center for that reason. Oh, and you can't knock these out with the bar, because it knocks out the point. So you have to back them out. And hopefully I can do that here with this one. So if I was using the spur drive, I would find my center, and I would bring up my tailstock and lock it in. And I would put my tool rest up close, lock that in, and I would put my thumb on a tool rest here, and I would spin this to try to get this turning true on, I want it true on one side. Chances are when you're cutting a blank, you might not, when I cut a blank, I try to keep these parallel, but it might not be exact. But I want the face of the bowl, so which one's the face? You know, on this blank, you could almost pick any face, but typically the bark side is the bottom of the bowl because you have the natural curve of the tree. So that's typically the bottom of the bowl, typically. And your center, which is closest to the pith, it would be the top of your bowl. But if you've got a blank that's square on all four edges, then you look at the grain and maybe you have a choice to pick a side. But typically, so I would play with this center at the bottom until this was turning true here. But I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use the worm drive because I want to show you what I do there. So this is how I would make the alignment. I would get this turning true on one side by manipulating this bottom on that, and I would spin it until it was turning true. But we're not going to do that today. So I want to use this worm drive. And I'm using the worm drive, and I don't know if they have them here, because it's a really quick and easy, and I believe really safe way to do it. So it's a matter of drilling a small hole. And about that deep will do it.
What are your thoughts about using a face plate? When is that best?
Say it one more time.
When is best to use a face plate?
Yeah, for bolt turning, I never use a faceplate, ever. Too much work, too much hassle. This is quick on, quick off. Certainly you can use faceplates. Don't, just because I don't use them, that doesn't mean you can't. Absolutely you can. On a larger, crazy, big piece, you might want to think about a faceplate, right? But the bowls on most times, you know, this chuck will work fine on most times. This is a stronghold chuck that I use. I have a couple of them, and this particular one has serrated jaws on them. So they come with, you come with different jaws. You can get them with different jaws. With the dovetail jaws, the Novacek that you're going to typically buy. Where's Phil? Most of the jaws here are serrated or
Smooth. Oh, no, yes.
they're serrated?
Yeah, right.
Not, and not dovetailed?
They are dovetail.
They are dovetail. So you can buy, I have two sets, one with a dovetail and one with a serrated. And I believe the serrated holds pretty well. You know, I would recommend a beginner probably use the dovetail. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. On my segmented work, faceplate every time. Because on a segmented work, it's on and off the lathe for every layer. I have to chew up every layer. And the only way to have it turning true is to put it on a faceplate. So if you take something off a chuck and you rechuck something, chances are it's not going to be right on, where a faceplate is going to be, typically. So this little woodworm will be attached in the center here. There's like a little sweet spot right there's a little sweet spot where it's locked in. I will typically power up the lathe and I will turn it down to as low as it'll go, and I'll let the lathe spin it on for me. And then I will lock the spindle and complete the get it so you actually have a lot of force here. You can actually strip the threads. I just want to get it snug up against the blank. Now this side's turning true. So if there was a time when I first discovered this worm drive, I was using it a lot. Then I went back to the spur drive because I had more of adjustment. I could adjust the grain direction to have a sweet spot in the middle of a bowl. But if I'm accurate with the chainsaw cutting my blanks, I find that I don't need to make that adjustment. And this is quick on, quick off, and really safe. I always bring out my tailstock. Always.
I have a question. When you drill that hole for the worm drive, it has to be perfectly perpendicular to the surface?
It gotta be close.
It won't be close.
Gotta be close. Once you tighten it up to the jaws, it's gotta be tight.
Okay, so you bottom down to the jaw.
Bottom down on the jaws. You want to be bottom down on the jaws, face of the jaws. So now we're ready to do something. And not having used this, one of the things I do at home, and I don't do this when I teach because I want people to learn the right tool height. And after a while, they get it after a while when they're not at the right height. So at home, I've got a little piece of PVC I've cut, a little collar that I put right here on the post. So my tool is set. My tool rest is set every time. And it's going to be different for each one of you because you're a different height. We're at a different height. And, I want to be comfortable at the lathe. And this is really comfortable for a lathe this height. So my tool is tipped down a little bit. I want to be able to hit center without going like this and jacking my shoulder up to hit center. So the tool height might vary a little bit depending on your height and the height of your lathe and where it's set and what you're standing on. You might have a mat down, changes the height. So your tool height might be a little different than mine. So be aware of that you want to adjust that tool height. So I want to start by getting this round, right? One of the things that's hard to teach, beginners, and you might experience this, think that the pressure, if they put more pressure on it going this way, they'll get more of a cut. When the pressure isn't that way, it's the push. So this is called the push cut. And the push comes, back to this chisel. We're talking about the bevel and a push cut. Where's the push coming from? Right? The push is in line with the chisel. The push with the bowl gouge is just a different shaped chisel. That's all it is. And the push is this way, not that way. So the push is in parallel with the tool rest, if you want to look at it that way. So it's parallel with the tool rest. And I'm coming straight across. So back to some of the basics, right? The reason I have this little thing, and I lost the red on the other side, but the tip of that wing. So typically a bowl gouge is at a 45 degrees. So the bevel, so the flute, this is 90, the flute at 90. This is the flute at 45 degrees. So as soon as you tip that tool over closer to 90 and you catch this wing, you get a catch. It catches this cutting edge and flips it over. That's how a catch happens. So if you're doing a push cut and you're at 45 degrees, nothing bad can happen. You just push it forward. And the same thing if you're making a cut going the other direction. If you tip your tool over and this catches your top edge, boom, tips your tool over and you have a catch. So tool out of 45. There are a lot of different lathes here. So make sure that get familiar with lathe, right? Know your lathe, know your safety, know how a lathe works, and most of you have some experience, so I don't need to do that, but make sure the speed is down before you turn it on. I'm gonna turn it on and see where I'm going. Before I even turn it on, I'm gonna spin it by hand. I think you saw me do that. So make sure everything clears. I'm gonna turn it on. I'm gonna look for, before I even turn it on, I'm gonna look for any loose bark. You know, there's a little bit of loose bark here, but I don't think that's gonna kill anybody.
Claude,
Yeah.
what would you recommend as a starting speed for rough?
So good question. My starting speed, you know, if you were at Monaco, you'd be turning at 2,000 RPM. It's like, oh my God, this is dangerous, but that's what he does. I rarely exceed 800, although I'm itching more towards 1,000 now. It's after seeing Matt Monaco's thing. Yeah, I could do this, right? But typically, I might start at 300 or 400, depending on the size of the piece I have. On a piece this size, my lathe's not going to walk around. Is your lathe bolted down? And if you're using a mini lathe, it depends on what you're using. On your speed, you want to get it balanced before you bring your speed up. So, you know, I'm gonna get it as high as I can with balancing the piece. So if you pick up a piece that's sawed like this, to get started might be difficult for you because it's air, wood. And if you're pushing in the wrong direction, you're gonna struggle. So the faster the speed, the quicker you get past the air speed thing. So let's make a cut and see what we got. That's at 1,000. Let's turn it down low. That's at 900, assuming that's right. So before you engage the wood, bowl gouge is on, tool rest. Put flutes at a 45. I can't quite see where my edge is. I'm gonna have to kind of feel for it. So there it is. But you're gonna get a lot of that. You're gonna get a lot of bounce in the beginning. But you can see that I'm riding the bevel and I'm bellied up to the tool rest. I've got good control here. I'm nailing the tool on the tool rest. The goal is to keep it rigid on the tool rest. If this were this was a metal turning lathe, right? The tool rest is rigid, and you're moving on a metal lathe. You're just moving the tool forward, but it's steady. So that's what this hand's doing. All the control is from the back end. I'm steering the tool with the back end, and I'm keeping my bevel at a 45. My goal is to get that round. Let's see what we got. Getting there. I have seen other professional turners not do what I just did. They start at the back end and come out the front or the side here. And certainly you can do it that way too, come out the side. But when you exit that side, if it isn't round, you get a lot of chatter coming out. So there's no right or wrong way, just something that, and you want about a 1/2 inch clearance on your tool rest, thereabouts, and a 1/2 inch because you need room for your tool. So I need room for my tool, but it's my hand is always on the back side of the tool rest at a safe place. So let's get some more action going. And I feel I can turn that up a little. So that's riding the bevel. Hear that noise? Not round yet. So starting that cut out here, this is not parallel to the other side. So starting that cut, if you really out of parallel, you might want to start by flattening this side and then getting it around. If this was really skewed, you might turn your tool rest the other way and flatten the other side. You need about 2 inches extension here to have room on most lathes to get my tool rest in there, just below center. I want to make sure that this clears and just barely there. So if I was coming in this direction, again, my tool's at a 45. You can see I'm right on the bevel. I am about 3/8 too high on my tool rest. Typically, I would turn the lathe off, but if you're beginning, that would be a good idea. So think about the grain direction. This cut, right? The grain's like this. I'm turning right into the grain, directly into the grain. So it's not going to be a clean cut, but it'll be a clean cut. Little bit cut.
Do a cold cut there?
A what?
Is that why some people do a cold cut there?
Oh, well, you could, yeah. But depending on how much out of round you are, a pull cut might be like a scraping shear cut. So it doesn't work real well with this grind, but it works better with the Ellsworth grind on a pull cut. But I want to get this flat. Right up to my live center. And then I would start to round it off. How many of you have this Ellsworth grind? Couple, three, oh, quite a few of you. Ooh, more than I thought. What I like about this is really for hogging out. You know, David Ellsworth will tell you can do entire bowl, start to finish with this grind. I would tend to agree, but disagree. I really like this to rough out. And I will start by, this is the bottom of my bowl, I'm roughing out. Left-handed, I can really hog out a lot of wood fast. So left-handed, this tool works like any other tool. It's got a bevel and a direction. So I love this left-handed thing. I'm what, 2 inches off the tool rest? That's a bit much. So I would angle my tool rest back in where I'm a little closer to my prey. So I have the advantage of the leverage. Keep in mind, I'm looking for a shape, right? So what am I doing? Am I just removing wood, or am I creating a shape? So I've got a shape started. No, it's got some spalting on this one. Little wormholes. So now I've got a shape started. My next step is going to be, one of the problems with this left-handed thing, I'm back here, I'm not really riding the bevel here, so that's going to be a really rough, that'll leave you a rough surface because it'll tear the grain. Until I get to about here, I can start to ride the bevel because I'm locked against the lathe, but I do really like this to rough out, but it'll leave you some torn grain. But I'm not worried about the torn grain in roughing out. So I'm gonna go back to my blue tool, and I like my blue tool for this because it's got a nice long bevel on it, and it's great for straight cuts, and I'm still too high. Great for straight cuts because it's got a nice long bevel. And I want to square off to my, I want to create my foot, my tenon. Not the foot, but the tenon. So I'm going to come in with a push cut, just like I was doing when I flattened it. And I'm going to stop right there. That's my tenon. So my tool's at a 45, I'm riding the bevel, and I'm pushing in that direction, in line with the shaft. Now I'm going to make a cut going the other way on the shoulder. So I've turned my tool over, I was here, and I've turned my tool over to the tenon. Not thick enough of a tenon, but I'm getting there. On a bowl this size, that might be enough. I'm squaring off the shoulder, my tenon. Because I've got these wings filed back, I can get right down to the bottom of the bowl and not get a catch because the wing is away from, it's not catching. As soon as you approach a shoulder, if you haven't taken these wings back, it's a catch. Did I leave enough wood? Not sure. So if this were a dovetail jaws, I would create this bevel, maybe use a smaller tool to create a little bevel like that. And I needed a 90 degree, well, it won't be 90, but I need a sharp corner. That inside corner has to be perfectly sharp. No roll on the bowl, no nothing. But if you look straight down at this tenon, you can see the dovetail. But it's even hard to tell, you got to square off to it. But it is dovetail.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Right. So if I had dovetail jaws, that's what I would be doing. Here at the school, I'm squaring off this tenon because I have serrated jaws. Square. So I want that shoulder to be square across and not dovetailed. So, you know, I'm eyeballing the size of the tenon to fit my chuck. I didn't bring my favorite stick, but I want to have the bottom of the bowl to be hollow. So right now I'm perfectly flat. So I love about my tool. So I need to be hollow a little bit. Come back in and clean up that corner. And you can do a shear scrape if you want to, clean that face up. So now I'm happy with my tenon. I've got it plumb square across because I've got, now I want to decide the size of the foot. So rule of thumb, what's the rule of thumb, Jim? A third? So the foot should be about a third, rule of thumb. And I guess it depends on what I'm making. If I'm making a yarn bowl, I might make the foot the size that I have right now, a little bit larger, more like half rather than a third, because I want it to be stable. So I want to determine that right now. So I'm going to say the foot's going to be right there, and I'm just going to make a cut where I think my foot wants to be, foot of the bowl. And now I'm going to switch over to my green tool because I can make a nice radius with this tool. I'm not looking for a straight cut, I'm looking for a radius cut. And now all I got to do is connect that point to that point with a curve. So I'm going to connect that point to that point. Until I have this foot established, I don't know where I'm going. But now I do. I have 2 points to connect. I got the top of the rim and the bottom of the foot. What I like about switching to this tool is I'm standing right on top. I can see my profile on top of the bowl. So, and because I'm riding the bevel, you probably can see the difference in the finish between this and roughing out, especially right in there. I mean, this is almost 220 starting. That's a much cleaner finish. So I want to start down at the foot. It's a push cut, and because I'm up against the tailstock, which is in my way, but I'm going to keep the tailstock in as long as I can. You're going to be happy with this wood. It's cutting like butter. So I want to pull that away. So watch the handle as I move forward. So the handle is steering the tool. The handle has to move. So the handle is way over here when I finished. I started with right up against the tailstock, and I'm not riding the bevel. But close. Now, I don't have much of a foot yet, so I want to go in a little deeper with my foot. But I'm going to use my straighter tool to dig this in a little bit. And maybe I can cut it back a little if I want to. And I want it about that deep for a size bowl. And I'll pick up where I left off. And I'm watching my profile as I go. I can't really get my tool in there with a tailstock up, so I'm going to come in with my other tool and kind of shave this back with a pull cut, but it's a scraping shear cut, I would call it. And I'm blending that in right there to make a nice curve. And I'd be happy with that. Now, because I've got the worm drive, I could have pulled this away sooner, right? And gave myself better access. Depends on what size bowl you're turning and, how safe it's going to be. But this is perfectly safe. I'm sorry?
Save the wall.
This here? Probably should take that out. I have an extension on so I have a double bed extension where I slide everything back. Pretty handy. But Matt Monaco talked about taking that spur drive out of there, or life center rather. Get your elbow on that point, you'd know about it. Again, if you're using a knockout bar, make sure that it doesn't, I knew that was gonna happen. So yeah, these don't bottom out. I'm gonna have some difficulty taking that out. So now, I'm gonna, because it's on the worm center, I want to flatten this just to get rid of some extra wood. So in the drying process, it's going to be pretty close to the same thickness, and you can clean it up, whatever, shear scrape. And you may have lost center, so I like to keep a skew handy. Yeah, you want enough of a big enough tenon so that you can chew it up later on. I would use a skew here for this, and I just want to mark center. so that when this dries, it's going to be oval. And where's my center? Right? If I mark it now, when this dries and turns oval, the center is still going to be the center. I don't have to look for it. I can get this mounted. I would jam chuck it, and I would use this cone center, and I would chew up my tenon, and I'd be back in business, flip it around, and go.
But when you're doing the final outside shape and through the cold cut, are you looking at the horizon of the bowl?
Yeah.
Or down the bevel?
I'm looking up here. You know, once I'm writing my bevel, I can take my eye off the tool and watch the shape happen. So yeah.
If you turn a while, do you ever check to make sure the screw chuck is still firmly seated in the work?
I've never had them come loose, so if you walk away from a piece for lunch or something, probably a good idea to check it. I've never had it loosen up with this worm drive, but if you're chucked up on a tenon, I have had them loosen up. So a good idea if you've walked away for a little bit. A lot of times I will just loosen this, and then I will put the lathe in reverse and let the lathe spin it out. I always remember to put it back and forward. So how do I do on my tenon? So my tenon is, the jaws are open plenty. You could go a little smaller than that, probably. The strongest grip is the closest to the close that the jaws are, the stronger the hold. But I don't think you really have to worry about that. People talk about that all the time, but I don't think so. Now what? Now we got the face. And I'm gonna treat this like it's a large bowl you're turning. I wouldn't pull up my tailstock for a bowl this size. But if I'm doing a 20-inch bowl, you bet I'm gonna have that tailstock up. And what I wanna do is, you know, I'm roughing out, so I just wanna lose. So I bring my tailstock up. I have ripped tenons off before. So bad things can happen. I've never seen anybody do this. And I'm gonna show it to you, not because, not really thinking that you're gonna do this, but you might. Just wanna show it. So with my grain direction is going this way, right through here, lined up. If I'm coming straight across, I'm going right into the grain. But what if I'm going at an angle to the face of the bowl? Now I'm not going straight into the grain. I'm going at an angle into the fibers, right? And if I come back the other way, it's like cutting a tree. So if this were a tree and you were cutting it with an axe, you would come in at an angle, two angles, down to a point, to a point. So I do that when I'm roughing out larger bowls. With this small bowl, probably wouldn't bother. But I'm going to show that real quick. So you could start by flattening it out. Bowl gouge is at a 45. I'm writing the bevel. I'm using my nice long bevel, straight bevel. But I'm going right into the fibers. Straight into the fiber. So if I'm hogging out a lot of wood, I'm going to start. So if I was doing regular cuts, forget that other stuff, where would I start? Where is it friendly? Where is it friendly to the grain? Right? So I want to start in the middle, right? Right here, it's friendly to the grain. And I'm going to work my way back to the rim on the inside of a bowl. That's the direction of the cut. So you start in the middle and you work your way back. It's grain friendly, right? So let's see what that looks like. So a lot of times I'm hogging out. I'll make a series of cuts, but I'm stopping short of that shoulder. I'm creating a shoulder with every cut. it starts to bounce a little like that, ease up on the push until it flattens out. See it? It wants to jump around. Oh, let it flatten out. And then start your push again. Oh. And this is the cut I was talking about. I would come back in the other direction. I'd flip my tool, then come back and come. It's like cutting a tree.
Can you feel about the bounce?
You'll get that once in a while. It's, maybe increase the speed a little bit. But it starts to bounce, just let up on the push. Let up on the push a little bit and let it find its way. Then once it flattens out, then continue the push. Sometimes you just got to muscle through it. That was a pretty big cut. I'd come back the other way. But you don't have to do it. You can just keep going towards the middle, pull this tail stalk away. But on the larger bowl, and I'm starting to get too far off the tool rest. So I'd want to angle my tool rest in.
What's the diameter that you're looking for to leave on a ring bowl?
Yeah, it depends on the size of your bowl, obviously. And it depends on your size of your bowl. On a bowl this size, I think a bowl this diameter could be a 1/2 inch, 5/8. I don't think this is going to be, I don't think it's going to warp a lot because of the wood is the way it is.
Could be 10%?
No.
No, you don't go 10%.
Well, I guess that would be a rule of thumb, 10%?
Yeah.
10% of what?
Diameter.
Right. So on a larger 19, 18-inch bowl, I might have 1 1/8 inches. I just finished one that was barely made it, 1 1/8 inches. Some warp more than others. Some woods have more tension in them than others. With this grind, I won't be able to ride the bevel to the bottom, but I'll be able to hog out a little bit more. I'll take that nub down, so we'll lose that nub. Starts to jump because I'm going right into the end grain as I make the corner. I want to ease up on the push. And I don't know if you noticed, but I brought the handle up because in order to hit center, my tool rest is good. I'm good height. But in order to hit center, I had to bring it up a little. Bring my tool up a little to hit center. So beginners are they're really rigid. They think they can stand right here and make that turn I just did. So they'll have a tendency to engage the cutting tool and push it forward with this hand all the way to the middle. They'll stand here, the handle won't move. And they're pushing the cutting at the tip of the tool this way, and they're not riding the bevel. And they're tearing the grain. So the right movement is you gotta be able to step back, make a fluid cut. So you have some motion into it. See, if you stand here, if I watch somebody turn and this handle's not moving, they're pushing with this hand, they're pushing it this way to the tip of the tool into the wood, and it's tearing the fibers. Not gonna get a clean cut. So I like to switch to my green tool because it's got a lesser of an angle on the bevel. And you know I'm gonna catch my elbow on that.
Tip down, just get out of it, let it tip right out of the way.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get how this works.
You can slide the headstock down.
There's a system.
Yeah. That's it.
So good lighting in your shop is pretty critical. You got to be able to see your cutting edge. If you can't see it, how can you control it if you can't see it? So this is way too dark to turn. You know, you get some nice overhead lighting, LED lights, I'm sure, but well, I'm making a point, yeah. So you got to make sure you have adequate lighting. And, you know, I've got shadows going on in here, stuff like that. All right, so, but look at the position of the handle. I almost got a catch. So I'm on the cutting edge, I think. I believe it was on the bevel. After a while, it becomes more of a feel. You really can't see it when you're on the inside. You can see it when you first start out, though. And so, a couple things. You want to check the depth of your bowl. I usually use a stick, 2 sticks, and now we have light. So, I pinch the 2 sticks together here, bring it up to the top. Even though I haven't chewed up the top yet, I see some raw wood there. So center of the bowl, pinch the sticks. Try that again. Bring it up to the top. Leave the stick where it is. Put this one flat against the foot. And I've got, what, 5/8? Maybe 3/4? Yeah, 5/8, which is about what I got for a rim. So the depth is good. So I've checked the depth. Now I'm going to check the wall thickness. So I have trouble teaching this to people. I don't know why. What I like to do is have the thumb screw in my right hand, and I'm going to ride this edge on the interior of the bowl. And I'm going to watch what it does on the exterior. So right there, I am loose. Right there, I'm tight. So on the inside, I've got, if I bring it back, I've got less than 1/8 of an inch, right? I know where it is on the inside. I open it up a little more, it keeps getting bigger. So I know I can take it between the edge of the top edge, and in about 3/4, there's about an 1/8 inch difference. So I know I'm safe. I have to be cognizant of the fact that I'm deep enough already. So what I've watched students do is come in and keep going in and in. They don't turn out fast enough. You got to swing the handle out so you're not going deeper in the center. So what would that look like? So as I approach the center, I want to swing it away to come out of the cut. So I don't want to go deeper in the middle. But I got to start back up here. But look at the position of the handle, because I'm lining up the bevel with the line of cut. So it would be right there. Didn't go any deeper. So by steering the tool, I got to come back out here. There's a little bump right there. Let's check it. Let's see how I did. Bring that, again, I got the thumb in my right hand, right finger, and I'm all the way down to about there before it starts to get tight. So between there and there is about 1/16 of an inch. So right here, I got a little bump. So right in the crotch right there, I can take a little more off. Adjust your tool rest. Ooh, not that one. I'm at center, pretty close. I can take a little more off right there. I would then, I'm going to call it good, bring my tool rest back out. I want to chew up this face. Not quite there. I want to bevel it in just a little bit like I would be finishing my bowl. So I want to rough it to mimic what my finish is going to be. And I want to ease the edges by cutting that edge back, that corner back, and cutting this corner back. I want to ease that edge, maybe a scraping cut right there. Flip my tool over, maybe a scraping cut over here. Why did I do that? So now, I didn't quite get it all the way, but close. Now it'd be ready for me to put some sealer on it. Some anchor seal, some tree saver, something. So I would take it off, coat it, put it away somewhere and forget about it for 3 to 6 months.
Claude, how precise do you try to get on a rough turn?
How much time do I want to spend? Good question. I want to get it close. Why do I want to get it close?
That's my question.
You guys know the answer already. I mean, you want it to dry evenly. So an even wall thickness is more likely to dry evenly, less likely to crack. Now I've eased these edges because the sealer, if I have a sharp point, knife point, how much sealer can I get on that knife point? Probably not much. So that's the reason for rounding these edges, so that the sealer can wrap around, get that edge. I don't have that knife edge. Because this is a demo and, I'm going to show you something else. Yeah.
You ever use alcohol when you're looking to improve your resolution for grain and shape and such?
No, not in this stage. If you were finishing something, you could want to, really what that's going to do is, well, it might highlight some torn grain. And, if you get some figured wood and you want to see what it's going to look like with finish on it, you could do that. But that would be the only advantage. One of the things I like to do, if this were a dry bowl right now, and I was finishing a dry bowl, I would start with the outside. I would start with a tenon and get it mounted just like I have here. I would start with I want to get it round again. So I would get it round both inside and out so I can bring my speed up, get rid of any vibration. And then when I get to the interior, I would do the exterior ready to sand. I would chew up the interior, get it round, so I can get my speed up and quill any vibration. Then I would come back and do a pull cut, because I'm at the headstock here, so I would do a pull cut. So if this were a dry bowl, maybe we can do a little run. So if this was a dry bowl and I'm using my green tool, the lesser angle, you're up against the chuck. So I'd bring my tool rest pretty close. I don't want my tool rest falling between the chuck and the tool rest. I don't want to get trapped there. So I always want to make sure my tool doesn't fit in there. And I want to get it close. I got to be right up against that foot of the bowl. I'm gonna do a pull cut here, and I'm gonna keep my tool at a low angle. In so doing, I'm almost hitting the bevel. By bringing my tool down, I'm gonna use the tip of the tool to get away from the headstock. Let's see what that looks like. So, pretend I'm trying to get this round. So I've got my pull. I'm doing a pull cut. Again, I hit the wood and didn't touch the tool rest. But it's a pull cut with the bevel pretty close to riding. and I'm chewing up the bowl. And then as I get closer, away from the headstock, I can turn my tool into a push cut. So there's my push cut. Right to the outside edge. And then I would do some scraping shear cuts. So I would look at my knife edge, and I would keep my knife edge at down low at a 45, and the knife edge is right up against the wood like that. And you have to follow the contour of the bowl, obviously, to clean that up. And I really like the Ellsworth grind for this. Chances are the foot of the bowl won't be turning true. With the Ellsworth grind, I can get in here and actually true up the foot as I just did. You're gonna have trouble sanding the foot because it's end grain. So if you can true it up like I just did right there, take a very little bit off, there's gonna be very little sanding there. And I can get right into that corner and scrape this. Do a shaping shear cut. I can get rid of all those little tool marks, and I can get this so that all it's sandable. And I move my tool rest several times because I want to be on the tip of the tool rest. Because if you're out here, you're trying to get that shear cut, you're coming up off the bowl, too high up on the bowl. I want to put my thumb on the back side of the tool, and I really can't see it. Does that wash it out? Not too bad. So my thumb's on the back side of the gouge, and I'm steadying it. And I'm steering it with the back of the tool. I want to keep that knife edge square off there. And I want to get these kinds of shavings.
Ron, they're both edges, you have a tool on the bowl.
No, just the bottom edge. If the top edge touches, nothing bad happens. But it won't give you the same finish. So if the top edge touches a little, you might have to go back over it. It'll leave a little mark on your bowl, but you won't get a catch. So I would do this until I was happy with the finish. I would stop it, look for any torn grain, which I don't have any there. Well, it looks pretty good. The grain's a little punky, so there's some little rat holes here, but that's because of the punkiness of the wood. So some of that would go away, not all of it. And then I would turn my attention to the inside.
When you have holes like that, do you fill them rough, or do you wait until it's finished and then fill it?
It depends on the bowl. If the bowl is, what's the intention of the bowl? Is it going to be a purposeful bowl or a decorative bowl? And does it have some other characters to it that I might want to just leave it?
Okay.
You're not going to polish a spot like that to a shine. You can't get a shine out of that. You might have a little dull spot there. And for, if for a display bowl, it might be fine. I don't know.
Well, I'd like to get your thoughts on, what I typically do when I do my finish cut is, I'll mount the bowl like this, and I'll put a groove in on the inside, and then I have wide jaws, and I'll expand into that, so then I can flip it around, and that way the outside of the bowl is easily exposed. What are your thoughts about that?
It's just one more step. And if you've got enough meat on the inside to do that, I've never tried it, but I can picture exactly what you're talking about. If that works for you, yeah. I don't see any issues doing it. Is it safe? Would I bring my tailstock up? Absolutely.
Yeah, do that.
Yeah, you have to, yeah. So now I would turn my attention, this is ready to sand. I would turn my attention to the inside. And as you all know, because I'm sure you've done it, when you start this cut, when you hit the surface, what's the tool going to want to do?
Go to
gonna go to the left. It's gonna want to skate across the face of the bowl, top edge of the bowl. And do you know why?
You get in the outside edge of the gouge, which is gonna roll out.
It's exactly right. It's physics. So it's the shape of the bowl gouge. It's got a cup shape, spoon shape. As soon as that spoon hits the wood, it wants to pull it out because it catches that bevel. It's like putting up a spoon there. So in order to avoid that, I do two things. I turn the bowl at a 90 degrees, so I have a knife edge. But what I also do is I determine what my wall thickness is, and I cut a 45. So watch what happens when I cut a 45. So because I've got this sharp angle, it doesn't want to ride back. And I've got my gouge turned at 90 degrees. So I'm going to determine what my wall thickness is going to be. Let's suppose it's right there. Now I can pick up on my inside cuts. Because I've got this 45-degree cut, it doesn't want to ride back as bad because I've got wood behind it. That wood behind it is going to prevent it from wanting to ride back. It still wants to ride a little, but less of. So you do have to be cautious. So I'm white-knuckled here. I'm trying to keep it from riding back as it wants to. But if I can get it, once you get it started, once you get it locked in, it's not going anywhere. But it's to get the cut started. You want it to ride back a little. Try to kick. And maybe you want to go a little thinner. Getting too far off the tool rest there. So without the 45, can you still do it? If you're ginger and if you're light-handed enough, you can get a cut started and have wood behind the bevel, so it doesn't ride back.
The same thing's going when you turn the spindle. When you're coming in, like, in a cove like that, you have to ease in and get that cut started because there's a place for your bevel to ride.
Exactly.
That's what happens. That's why you skate, because the bevel has got no place to ride yet.
So I would keep going to even thickness. And then sometimes, you want to trim this top. Once you get this thin, typically I don't go back, but sometimes I do go back. But this is where I see beginners blow up their bowl because they go back to the top edge because they didn't get it all the way here. It's not quite. So these are really, I like to use my long bevel for this, and they're really delicate cuts. So you can do it. So really, really, really delicate cuts. And yeah, you can do a shear scrape, but just be aware that when they get that thin, typically you don't want to be going back there. And I do it on my finished bowls. I will ease that edge a little bit, kind of like that. And same thing on the inside. I'll make a little bevel. Yeah. All right. So what didn't I cover? Let me see. I think I covered most of it. I would take this off and cover it with sealer and let it dry 3 to 6 months.
You cover just the end grain or the whole wall?
That's a good question. So do I just do the end grain? So where's the end grain start and stop? That's all end grain all the way until I hit right there. I get some flat grain right there. The rest of this is all end grain. 99%, 98% end grain. Cover the whole thing, forward and back. So the question is, when you go to finish the bowl and you're taking the tenon off.
Yeah.
So that's a great question. I didn't bring them with me, but I have wood that I've turned, I have like 3 different size chunks of wood that I would chuck up, and I'm gonna jam chuck it. So once I've jam chucked it and I got my tailstock up, I'm gonna chew up the tenon. Now I'm flipping it around, I'm back to 0. And I'll do what I just showed you. And now you want to get rid of the tenon. Ooh, what am I doing with that? I have a couple ways. I have the Longsworth chuck. Is that what it is? Longsworth? And it does up to 14 inches in diameter. So I use that.
I have a Coles chuck thing, but it doesn't really hold the bowl very well. I've had them spin off like crazy.
Yep. Yeah, there's probably a Longworth chuck here somewhere, but I don't quite see it.
Cold jaws, I find depends on the angle of your bowl.
Yeah.
So like if it's more steep or more angled, because those little rubbers, it's almost like a dovetail.
Yeah.
Those little rubber pieces, so if the bowl's too straight, then you could potentially lose it.
So the cold jaws are a lot of work
Yeah.
to switch out your jaws.
Yeah.
So if you get a Longworth chuck, great. If you don't have one, don't want to invest in one, I'll use a jam chuck. So I'll mount a piece of plywood that I can chuck up, that's turned around. I will jam it on the rim, on against that plywood. I'll bring my tailstock up. I will cut everything but a little nub off this tenon. I will sand the bottom. Then I'll pull my tailstock away and clip that little nib that I have and clean it up. So a couple of ways you do it. I do it on large bowls all the time. My Longsworth will only hold a 14-inch bowl, no larger. Any larger than that, I'm jamming it up against a piece of plywood.
Just a flush. Push, you don't have to,
I put a glue block on a piece of plywood
yeah,
with a tenon on it that I put right in my chuck.
jam it up there.
Jam it up there and take that little nub off at the end. Good to go.
Question. I often get, on the finish side of the twice-turned bowl, get what you mentioned earlier, crushed grain, particularly at the corner turnout, particularly if I'm trying to turn like something closed form calabash style.
Yeah.
Any advice on tool application and orientation to help to avoid that?
That's a great question. Short answer is I don't know. I had seen other turners do some tricks with their bow gouges, and they come up above center and then back down again to help prevent some of that. I've never tried it, but less of a bevel will be less of a heel rub. So there'll be less of that crushing. And like I said, you won't see it until you go to sand and like, where did they come from? And you've actually crushed the fibers a little bit. You got to get past that in order for it not to show up. So less of a bevel if you're sharpening by hand, and you got a sharper, less of a bevel. There's less apt to do that. And different woods will react differently. So I think cherry's really prone to that problem. Crushing the fibers. What else we got? Yep.
You said you could use sealant, is it a surface sealant or is it something that goes into the wood itself?
It's more of a surface thing. The Tree Saver is, I think the Tree Saver, one of them is PVA based. And according to Ron Maku, you could use kids glue, that school glue, the white glue, and do the same thing. It's PVA, right? And I think that Anchor Seal has a wax component to it, so it's a little bit different formula. But it works great. But either way. When it first started out, it was paper bags. People said, oh, put shavings in the bags. I tried that, and boy, what a mess that was. So I just went to straight paper bags. And I didn't stack them tightly. I had something in between each stack of bowls. So I made a rail, 2 sticks, 3/4 by 3/4 sticks, that held together by a little cross piece that would ride right here. And I could just keep stacking bowls up. Would have a little air between them, so they dry more evenly, right? You don't want to stack one on top of the other, because it'll go moldy. It'll be inside.
Shavings or newspaper in there, you can stack them in a paper bag.
Yes. I don't use the bags anymore. I'm using a sealer. And the sealer takes probably a month or 2 extra to dry over the bags. They'll walk a little coming off
But it,
The
he
seal.
probably is talking 4 to 6 months, is that?
Yeah, it depends on, so why 4 to 6 months? It depends on the time of year you've cut the tree, right? So if you cut in the winter, there's less moisture in the tree, the quicker it's gonna dry. Cut them this time of year, after all that rain we had, yeah, it'll be more on the longer side, 6 to 8 months. But the sealer does lengthen the dry time quite a bit, at least a month or two. I was noticed when I first started using the sealer, when I go to finish a piece, they would walk a little. In other words, they would move a little bit. And I really don't have a problem if they move a little, because people buying bowls they're not spinning them. They won't know that it's not 100% true. As long as it rests okay on a table, you're fine. So typically you don't move that much.
How do you know when it's dry?
Well, I date them, number one, so I got a nice clean bottom where I can date the bowl. I can write down what the wood type is, because sometimes it's hard to tell. I've not written the wood type before and picked up a piece like, what is this? Sometimes the wood will trick you. So I write the wood type and where I got the wood from. You know, if Mike gave me a piece of wood, I might want to put Mike Don's name on there, so that, because I promised him a bowl, because I got the wood for free, right? So I want to make sure I mark it. So if I pick up a piece and it's a year old that I've rough turned, yeah, it's going to be pretty dry. If it's 6 or 7 months, I'm like, might be close. Depends on how much in a hurry I am to put a piece on and finish it.
So you don't weigh them?
No, you can weigh them if you want, right? The theory is when you weigh a piece, when you first turn them, you keep weighing it until it stops losing weight. And it's, in theory, dry. But how much work is that?
You have too much hand, time on your hands.
Too much work. I've never weighed a piece. That's just too much work. Why bother?
So you didn't finish the inside of that bowl yet? You're gonna finish that after it's drying?
Yeah, that would be the idea. I only did this for demos, to show you this cut on the outside edge. So I didn't go all the way, but
Normally, would you finish?
yeah.
Because once it ovals out or distorts a little, you can't trim that back up.
Right. Well, you can when you finish turn it, you have that one opportunity when you finish turn it to chew everything up. But once you cut the tenon off, yeah, you start to lose that opportunity. You can always vacuum chuck them on. There's ways to do things, but
So if it's warped out and it's oval shaped, you just tell me you can bring it back to round?
yeah,
You leave the thick wall.
that's the idea.
Not the wall over there. So you wouldn't normally make a very thin wall when you rough that.
So I have now passed away. Scott Ruswick used to turn a lot of once-turned bowls. That was his thing. And he purposely turned them thinner, turned them green, turned them thin, and they'll actually dry while you have them on the lathe. He was able to turn them thin enough, get them sanded and enough so that he could once turn all his bowls. So that was what he liked. Then they will go oval, and then once they've done that, he'll flatten the bottom. Not sure how he flattened the bottom, maybe on a piece of sandpaper, belt sander maybe.
I used to use a belt sander.
Belt sander, flatten the bottom so they don't rock on the table, and good to go.
What do you do with all the bowls that are cracked after the drying process?
Well, if you're crafty like Don, which I'm not, I would sew them up with some leather or decorate them in some way. But there's ways around it. You could cut a bowl in half and make a wall lamp or something. There's ways to decorate them, but again, how much time do I want to put in a piece? You know, how much time do I put in a bowl this size when it takes as much time to finish the bowl this size as it does one that I can get $200 for? Why would I bother with this one when I can only get $75 for it? So anyway, it's time and money. Time is money. So we don't have any sealer here, but you would take them home and get some sealer, or find a friend who's got some sealer and coat it, or try the paper bag trick. You know, you don't have to run out and get sealer. You could do the paper bag trick if you want, and come back and finish it at another meeting, right? So That being said,
Well, this is-
Welcome.